His intelligence was ever sharp and alert, yet his health did not improve. Bhavananda Goswami had come from Mayapur and had been intimately serving Srila Prabhupada. But he had to return to Bengal for important preaching duties. Srila Prabhupada said there was no doubt that Bhavananda was the best at giving message and taking personal care of his spiritual master. But the personal servant's duties were not as important as preaching. Upendra, who had come to be Srila Prabhupada's personal servant, was surprised to see how Prabhupada's diet had changed. He could no longer cook the khichdi which Prabhupada had previously liked. Often Prabhupada would not even speak when he wanted something, but would indicate an idea or a desire with a nod of the head, a glance, a flick of a finger, or a sound like hmm. From his room, Prabhupada heard the routine sounds of the day, the call of the cuckoos and the crows, the hammering of the marble workers, and the more distant car engines, horns, bicycle bells. He could also hear the pujari's bell and the conch shell at each aarti, as well as the kirtans and bhajans in the temple room. One morning, while Prabhupada was talking to Tamal Krishna and Giriraj, the recording of the Govinda song began, signifying, as it did in all the ISKCON temples, that the deity was now giving morning darshan. Krishna consciousness is such a nice thing, said Prabhupada. Alone in this world, I am struggling, and the so called intelligent persons, they will not come. They have business. Why? If it is actually beneficial to the human society, why why I should try alone? I will go on trying as long as I live. There will be no checking but what kind of intelligent persons there are. We shall go on playing Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. People may hear or not hear. We don't mind. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from fifth canto, 14th chapter and 23rd verse. I'll read the verse and synonyms. Atha cha tasmadubhaya thapi ki hi karmasmin atmana samsara vapnam udaharanti. Word by word translation. Atha, now, cha, and, tasmad, because of this, ubhayathapi, both in this life and in the next. He, undoubtedly, karma, fruitive activities, asmin, on this path of sense enjoyment, atmanaha, of the living entity, samsara, of material life, avapanam, the cultivation ground or source. The cultivation ground or source. Udaharanti, the authorities of the Vedas say. Translation by His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Learned scholars and transcendentalists therefore condemn the materialistic path of fruitive activity because it is the original source and breeding ground of material miseries, both in this life and in the next. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Not knowing the value of life, karmis create situations whereby they suffer in this life and the next. Unfortunately, karmis are very attached to material sense gratification and they cannot appreciate the miserable condition of material life, neither in this life or in the next. Therefore, the Vedas enjoin that one should awaken to spiritual consciousness and utilize all of his activities to attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord Himself says in Bhagavad Gita 9.27, Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasyat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurusva madarpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. The results of all one's activities should be utilized not for sense gratification, but for the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord gives all information in Bhagavad Gita about the aim of life, and at the end of Bhagavad Gita, He demands surrender unto Him. People do not generally like this demand, but one who cultivates spiritual knowledge for many births eventually surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथस्वामिति नामिने नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरस्ते तुषे नमः हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिकाकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. I seek blessings from all of you. I don't usually give Bhagavatam classes. Please forgive any of my offenses. It's a I'm giving an attempt based on what I've heard from senior devotees on this verse. So this chapter is the conversation between Jadabharat and Rahugana, King Rahugana. You might already know the story of Jadabharat, that he was a great king, Bharat, in his past life. He falls down while practicing his devotional service due to the attachment to a deer. And in his next life, he's born as a deer, and after that, he's born as a human, Jadabharat. Now he pretends to be a dumb person, just to make sure that this time he doesn't fall from his devotional service. And in due course, he meets King Rahugana. And when the king finds that Jadabharat is not an ordinary person, he requests him to enlighten him with his wisdom. And this is when Jadabharat goes on and on, speaks a lot of wisdom. He enlightens the king. And we see in fifth canto, He's speaking so many verses, chapter after chapter. And in this chapter 14, Jadabharat goes into much detail of the futility of material sense gratification. That's why the name of the chapter is The Material World as the Great Forest of Enjoyment. And in this chapter, he gives the hopes and horrors of an allegorical merchant who has entered into the forest of material enjoyment. In our scriptures, we see, like in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are various descriptions of Krishna, his devotees, and the loving exchanges between them as different allegories and analogies. Analogies. So, like that, in this chapter, the material world is compared to a great forest of enjoyment, and the living entity is compared to a merchant. And as you know, the merchants sometimes enter into the forest to collect some rare things, but they have to face so many dangers of the forest to get some profit. Yeah. Um, and and similarly, Srila Prabhupada gives an analogy of ocean, and he compares this material world as an ocean. An ocean looks very attractive from distance. Its blue color is very pleasing to the eyes, and it's the sound of its waves are very soothing to our ears. But the same ocean is completely different when we enter deep into it. It shows its horrific nature, like tidal waves, tsunamis. Some adventurers like surfers, divers, they might find it adventurous or some thrill or enjoyment, but they know deep in their heart that it's not an easy ride, and because their lives are always at risk. And Mahaprabhu, in his Sikshastakam, he calls this material world as the poisonous ocean. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam Vishame. Visha means poison. Bhavam Buddha means bhava ambuda. Ambuda is water. Bhava means material desires. So this material world is a poisonous ocean, he says. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives commentary on this verse and explains this verse by giving an analogy that a living entity who enters into this material world goes through different phenomena and experiences. And especially three experiences he mentions here. The first one is the huge tidal waves that one has to go through in this ocean. And these tidal waves are compared to the three miseries, three tapa, Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, and Adi Daivik. Adhyatmik, anyone knows what is Adhyatmik? Adhyatmik is a type of miseries which arise from our own mind. Adhyatmik. Adi Bhautik are the miseries which arise from different living entities. So Adhyatmik miseries, what kind of Adhyatmik miseries? So mind gives us a lot of troubles, unnecessary troubles, right? It always desires some or the other thing. So that is a type of misery. And Adi Daivik is the miseries caused by other living entities. So say any insects, animals, any form of living entities which trouble us are called Adhyatmic miseries. And Adi Daivik, the miseries caused by the demigods, like torrential rains, earthquakes, yeah. So any calamities that we face caused by demigods are called Adi Daivik. So the living entity, when traveling around this material world, is beaten continuously with or the other miseries caused by these three tapas. And while going through these miseries, or or when we are in the middle of an ocean and disturbed by these huge tidal waves, we are thirsty. We are very much, desiring for water. But the only water that is available in the middle of ocean is what? Salty water. There's no drinking water. But when the living entity tries to quench its thirst with that salty water, what happens? The thirst is not quenched, but it is aggravated. So, like that, a living entity, when it tries to quench the thirst caused by different miseries, caused by these three, it tries to quench it by more sense gratification, more and more sense gratification. For example, when someone is frustrated at work, or maintaining one's life, then one turns to different sense gratifications like alcohol, drugs, yeah, or watching. These are extreme form of sense gratification. But any form of sense gratification will not quench the thirst or will not give any relief to this living entity. But what it does, it aggravates. It aggravates the thirst, and the living entity wants it more and more. So the salty water, the Bhaktivinoda Thakur compares the salty water as the different forms of sense enjoyment. And then next, the living entity living entity what it faces in this middle of ocean, in the middle of the material ocean, is to it seeks some association, some association of friends or companion, because it feels loneliness. He wants to get out of this situation with the help of some companion. But who is there in the middle of ocean to help him? Only form of life we see in the middle of ocean is aquatics. Some are and some are deadly aquatics. Can they help him? Can they help the living entity to get out of the situation? Not really. The deadly aquatics will rip him apart. So these deadly aquatics are compared by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as relatives and friends who gives a lot of troubles and generally do not help the living entity to come out of this material ocean, or this ocean of material world. They might help him in some way, but not to come out of this situation. So what does the living entity do? Then it tries to find out its own means to come out of it, come out of this troublesome situation. So So if you see in the middle of ocean, we find some marine debris which are called flotsam and jetsam. The living entity might try to hold on to some of these debris, maybe some wooden logs or doors, and think that okay, now I'll hold one of these and cross over this ocean. But realistically, it's not possible. It's not possible to cross over with that little help. And this flotsam and jetsam are compared by Bhaktivinoda Thakur as karmakand activities in real life. In real life, the living entity tries to use the means of karmakand activities or pious activities, or you can say religious activities, thinking that these will help him to come out of uh, the miseries of life. But actually speaking, they cannot. They might give some relief, but they will not help him. The only help that he can find in the middle of ocean is a big boat or ship, which is guided by a good captain, will help him to cross over or come back to shore. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur compares this boat or ship to the devotional service, and the captain he compares to um, a spiritual guide or spiritual master or a pure devotee. But but how does a living entity fall into this material world? It's explained in Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad with a very nice example. So all of us who left Krishna in the spiritual world are compared to fireflies, and Krishna is compared to a bright sun. Fireflies, they are in front of sun. They do glow, but they are very minute compared to the brightness of the sun. When a firefly decides to show its light, like Krishna does, it is not possible in the spiritual world because as we discussed, its glow or light is very insignificant compared to the glow of Krishna. The only way the fly can show its glare or glow is in the darkness. That's the reason we are sent to this material world, which is full of darkness. And it is explained that there are two things that Krishna can't do, which is kind of negative glorification of Krishna. It is also called Vyajastuti. So these two things are Krishna will never reject a person who tries to surrender unto him. We've seen in the past in Ramayana that when Vibhishana comes to surrender to Lord Ram, he asks his monkey companions about Vibhishan's credibility, and they all are very much skeptical to make Vibhishan as or yes to to get Vibhishan in their camp. But Lord Ram says, "What about? I mean, even if Ravan comes to me and surrenders to me, I will accept him. What to speak of Vibhishan? Vibhishan is my dear devotee." And then Lord Ram accepts Vibhishan as his servant. So, like that, Krishna never rejects anyone who surrenders unto him. And the second thing which Krishna can't do is that he cannot see darkness. So, wherever Krishna goes, he illuminates that place with brightness. So in 10th canto, there is a pastime where gopis complain, Mother Yashoda, that no matter where we hide our butter, whether it is in darkness or whether it's in a deep dark room, Krishna finds it out. And Mother Yashoda says that it might be due to the jewelry that I put on, and when they glow, Krishna can see everything. But Gopi say, and the Mother Yashoda says, okay, then I'll remove those jewelries, and from tomorrow onwards, I'll not decorate Krishna with a lot of jewelries. But Gopi says, that's not the case. It's not the jewelries which are helping Krishna to find the butter. The body of Krishna, which is effulgent and bright, and wherever he goes, he can see everything. No matter where we hide our butter, he can find it. Therefore, the fireflies, or we are sent to this darkness or the material world, so that we can attempt to glow our light, show some light. But our light is so insignificant. Even though we think we can glow like Krishna, it is not possible. Even if all the living entities in this material world combine together and try to glow this universe, it is not possible, because we are not at all any match to the sun like Krishna. And then the Upanishad continues to explain that this living entity gets four kinds of desires when it comes to this material world. And these desires are, and the first one is to desire to associate with opposite sex. Every living entity in this world feels incompleteness. Because in the spiritual world, we are always serving Krishna, our companion. We are always in continuous association with Krishna. But in this world, when we are alone, we feel incompleteness. That's why we desire to associate with an opposite sex, so that we feel completeness. We, we get to serve someone. And when the living entity finds a companion, the next desire is to have offsprings. And this desire is to imitate the creativity or the ability to create offsprings by Krishna. So, Krishna has so many offsprings. So, the living entity tries to imitate Krishna by desiring to have offsprings. So, it unites with the opposite sex and gets children. Third desire is for accumulation of wealth. Why? Because to maintain the or to to maintain the first and second desire, the association of opposite sex, and to get the children, get the offsprings. So to maintain them, it needs wealth. Shri Shri Khodanitai Mahapurush Shri Ki Jai. And this desire of wealth is also called as Bahir Prana. Bahir Prana. There is Anta Prana and Bahir Prana. Anta Prana is what maintains our body within, and externally we need Bahir Prana to maintain our desires. Bahir Prana is wealth, different resources that we need to maintain our children, our extended family. Because the living entity needs so many things like house, car, clothes, groceries, holidays, gifts. The list never ends. And when the living entity is frustrated with the attempts to maintain his life and the first three desires, then the fourth desire comes in, which was a big surprise for me when I heard this. And this desire is to ability to speak. I was surprised. Do we not have? Do we all not have the ability to speak? We do have, but this desire to ability to speak is is out of the frustration, and the out of the frustration of satisfying the first three desires. The living entity wants to speak to himself to get some relief, speaking something good about himself or others, or this of this material world. And it also sometimes speaks bad about others and tries to get some relief. I also do sometimes. Like, when I'm frustrated, I try to speak to myself, and 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 then and which gives me some relief. The things which I can't express to others, I try to speak to myself. I could relate that this desire of ability to speak is is um, is in relation to the first three desires, which is very nicely explained in this Upanishad. And it is also said in this canto's fifth chapter, eighth verse, Pumsastriya mithani bhavam etam tayor mitho hridaya granthim ahu ato griha kshetre sutapta vittair janasya mohoyam aham mameti. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which tries to get which tries to which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Yeah, so the first desire to associate with opposite sex further binds the living entity into to accumulate more and more, to maintain home, property, children, relatives. But as against this principle, um, we can say, just like here it is says, Atho Grihkshetre Sutapta Vittair, we can say, Atha Shri Krishna Namadi. So to come out of these desires, to to get some relief or to get relief out of these desires, we can come in contact with the name, fame, and quality of Krishna, and then we can dovetail all these desires in the service of Krishna. That is the solution offered by pure devotees and the scriptures. And then Jadabharata further explains this chapter that a living entity passes through three phases of sense gratification in this material world. And first of them is Kama Madhu Lavana. Kama Madhu Lavana. So he says, Kama is lust or sense gratification. Madhu is honey. Lavana means very insignificant. So the sense gratification is very insignificant. It is like few drops of honey. It does have some sweetness, but it's very, very tiny. So instead of quenching the thirst, of miseries, it aggravates. This sweetness, a little sweetness, makes us desire more and more honey. Yeah? And Srila Prabhupada says the difference between Maya and Krishna is that both Maya and Krishna attract the living entities. But Maya cannot satisfy the living entities, whereas Krishna can satisfy the living entities. So that's the reason we need to make the right choice whether to serve Maya or Krishna. And so the Jadabharat says here that the pleasure derived from sense gratification is like drops of honey, and Maya keeps on attracting the living entities, and thus the living entities keeps on working hard and hard to get that little drops of honey. It's like after a full day of fasting, when we see a feast full of a table full of our favorite dishes, but the devotee who serves, he tells us that we are allowed to eat only few morsels of that feast. So it's a frustration, right? It's after a full day of fasting, if we are allowed to eat only few drops of the feast or few morsels of the feast, then it's like putting in so much effort, but the result is some few drops of honey. So that's the irony that a living entity has to deal with. So the next phase is the arrangement that we make to get that relief or get that few drops of honey is not insignificant. So the result what we get is insignificant, but the arrangement or the effort that we put in is not insignificant. And Srila Prabhupada says that this elaborate arrangement that we make is called by leaders as economic development, which is nothing but lust in an organized scale. So animals also engage themselves in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So do we. But we make so many arrangements to perform these very menial or basic activities. So there's a New York businessman whose favorite dish is roasted chicken, and that roasted chicken comes from Paris. So he makes elaborate arrangements. He has a team of servants who fly every day to Paris, from New York to Paris, to get some piece of roasted chicken and offer him, which is which is eating is a basic thing. We don't need to make such arrangements. So not only the businessman, even the servants, his servants, are wasting their valuable time in performing or engaging in menial activities like eating. Like that, we also spend a lot of time and energy for making arrangements for sleeping and mating, not to speak of them, and especially defending. So many governments make or invest such vast amounts of wealth to make themselves safe from whom? From the same species. Have you seen animals like tigers defending from their own species? Man is the only species which spends so much of time and energy in defending from their own people. From their own people. Like that, what Jada says enjoyment is very insignificant, but the arrangement is significant. Very, very significant. But the third thing is reaction that comes out of this sense gratification is also significant. It's very significant. And he says, Nihata patati apare. Nihata means we are severely beaten to enjoy. Patati means we fall down. Apare, and what we have to go through, what the reaction is not insignificant. It is very horrific and horrible. If if we further study fifth canto, we will see how a living entity goes through the hellish conditions. The reactions of its sins are are gory, and when we go through the different planets, hellish planets, and the punishments that our subtle body goes through is unbearable. Is unbearable. And Rahuguna, sorry, and Jarabharat continues to enlighten Rahuguna the various predicaments of this material world, forest-like material world, and he uh, also explains how to get out of it in the later chapters. Um, I think that's what I have to say about this verse, Prabhujis and Matajis. Sorry, I'm ending this session a bit early. If you have any comments or questions I'll pass it to Raghunath Bhatti Prabhu and Prabhupada Pran Prabhu. Any comments, any enlightenments like Jadabharat has done in this chapter, and you've been attending. I've seen the last 4 sessions that you regularly attend these classes. So I request all of you to share some of your realizations and understanding on these verses. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much for this wonderful class. We have a question. What happened at the beginning of this video? You mentioned this point that in the ocean there is aquatics that cannot help you, cannot save you, relatives, friends, children, etc. And the situation, that unless you're like a monk, and live in a temple, you are surrounded with all these people that are there. So how to kind of navigate through this, on one hand, it has to be responsible, not negligent, and cold, and at the same time, with regular people, at the same time, there's a certain degree of detachment has to be there, with the mind of God, and understanding that I want these people want giving me a God that opens the door of life. So what you could say about this kind of challenge of the life.
Yes, Prabhu. It's a great challenge, especially for the devotees or potential devotees who live outside the temple, who are not in a conducive environment like you all are in Karuna Bhavan, under the shelter of Shri Shri Kodanitaya Mahapushishi. um, yeah, I'll try to share my understanding, my experience. But before that, I request Prabhupada Pran Prabhu to show some light on this. Who's been serving the mission for so many years and have guided so many devotees to come, I mean, to get out of these challenges. Prabhupada Pran Prabhu.
The right now question you God wants to hear from you. Everyone's got their own experiences and lessons in life to share. Sure, yours is as valid examples.
Yeah, Prabhu, I'll try. So the challenges are mainly due to our own desires, is what I feel, and those desires only can either help us or take us away from Krishna. If we dovetail those desires in the service of Krishna, then slowly and gradually we'll be able to cross over this ocean. But if we engage ourselves, I mean, to fulfill these desires away from Krishna, then there'll be so many challenges. As you rightly mentioned, there'll be devotees, sorry, there'll be relatives, friends, and other people who will try to exploit us, who will try to uh, take us away from devotees and our devotional life. As soon as we try to engage our senses and desires, then automatically all these troubles, not just troubles, the people or the living entities who cause us these troubles will try to be away from us, because they will think that we might influence them as well. So, as Jadabharat says here, we should try to associate as much as possible and engage ourselves in devotional life. Especially for grahasthas, it is very much necessary to keep Krishna in center and take the guidance of a spiritual master or senior devotees who will keep us under their shelter and their lordships. And slowly and gradually, we will be able to cross over this ocean. It may not be due to our own endeavor or our own sadhana that we will be able to go back to Godhead. But mainly, what I've realized, what I've understood, it is by the mercy of devotees can only help us in this regard. If we take it, if we take it seriously, then one day we will, if not in this lifetime, then probably in future, in few lifetimes, we'll be able to cross over. I hope that helps you in some way. Any comments, realizations? Ashish Prabhu.
Thank you very much for that, Dasa. Very inspiring. Just to meditate and rest upon. Thank you very much.
What did you want to do? Share something?
Yes, I've had some experiences where finding being to undesirable environments, to be with people that I care about, to help them not get too lost. And also there was, desiring to be there, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have gone through. So for example, being in nightclubs where I haven't been drinking alcohol or anything like this, and other people have, and then it's provided an inspiration for other people to come away from the intoxication part of it and understand maybe it's more dancing that they're interested in, or have like really amazing conversations with people. Or there's another example where one of the people that I was living with was trying to organise a party, that the original idea was all based on like hedonism, and through expressing my feelings and the fact that they wanted me to be there, the plan slowly changed and then changed again to the point where it was much more diluted down. So I guess my question is, how do we know when it's okay to be in certain environments and when it's not, to be in certain association and when it's not?
My understanding is that when we deal with karmis, we should be careful to not take their association, rather we should give our association. We should give our association, and when we are with devotees, we should take their association. So just like in Bhagavad Gita it is said, Pandita Samadarshana. So we should treat everyone with equal vision. Meaning, when we say, for example, when we enter into pubs, we shouldn't offend them, saying, okay, these people are really inferior to me. So the nature of a devotee is to help others who are in need and take help from whom he can, for example, pure devotees can give guidance to everyone. So a devotee will always take guidance from pure devotees and give what he has to the others in need. So like that, we should be very careful when we associate with different people, whether to take association from them or to give. That was more generic answer for my understanding. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it really does, because it brings a different understanding to this word associate. Maybe in the past there's been a bit of a perspective, or possibly interpretation from the nectar of instruction, and other people that, like neophytes, we're all trying to guide each other in the ways that we can. That means just don't go around at all, but it brings a nice perspective.
Yeah, and I've heard from some devotees that we should associate with more. We should associate with peers more, where we can share our challenges with equals. So I think it is around 70 to 75% of our association or our time should be spent with peers, and then around 10 to 15% with neophytes, and to 10 to 15% with senior devotees. So senior devotees to take guidance from them, and with neophytes to help them to elevate themselves. Not judging them, but these are neophytes, these are I'm elevating. But it's like cooperation amongst ourselves to help each other.
Just wonder where your percentages from.
These percentages may not be accurate, but I'm just giving you more percentage with peers, less with neophytes and senior devotees.
Circumstances are not always about it. Maybe that someone's always having to, or mostly having to associate with the juniors or with the seniors. So, might not be necessarily be taken as absolute truth that they have to do that, otherwise someone may decide they have to go to another temple because it's not enough people of that category there. So I don't know that that can actually be saved as some kind of like fast rule.
It depends on time, place, and circumstances as well. If there are more senior devotees, then we might have less peers. But this principle is to, like if we associate more with senior devotees, we might, the saying, familiarity breeds contempt. So we may take the association of senior devotees cheaply when we are with them, more. When we associate with them, we get along with them for most of our time, then we may take them cheaply. So that's the reason it is said that we should be careful while while being with seniors. We should try to avoid as much as possible these offences and take only the guidance from them.
That's your point. And what would be the disadvantage of associating with juniors too much?
Then we might end up getting influenced by them. By them. And yeah, I think that's the reason why it is said.
Or giving room to become contemptuous as well.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. But we can by giving them room to be very close to us, and then again, yes, that's good.
Maybe also as well that there's not enough like being met on the same level or being challenged to grow. To have that like equal.
Yeah, it's like children when they are with siblings, they grow well. When there's an age gap between siblings, then it's difficult for them to cope up. You can say the elder one will feel that oh yeah, I'm having to spend time with my younger one. So like that, I'm not able to explain it properly, but the peers or the siblings of similar age will enjoy their association more, will be able to grow up quickly or will be able to grow better than compared to those siblings which have got generation gap. So,
Questions? Sometimes we in a situation where we think we have to change the circumstances, but we're not sure whether we have to change the circumstances or change ourselves. Then, so how would we know that whether we have to change ourselves internally or change the circumstances externally?
that's a difficult question to answer. So, changing the circumstances internally and externally to help ourselves. And when to change externally and when to change internally.
Yeah, so sometimes prelates say that the living entities are always trying to make some material adjustment, and so that we are not just falling into a trap of trying to manipulate situations or people or things to make ourselves not have to do anything internally. So we don't want to get into that trap, but at the same time, if we just accept everything which is going on around us and just try to make adjustments internally all the time, then perhaps that's not correct either. So how would we understand when external adjustments or internal adjustments need to be made?
Yes, as you said, making these internal or external arrangements continuously is not recommended, because no place in this world is perfect. No place in this world is perfect for us. There will be no perfect time to perform our devotional service as well. So, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Matra Sparshasta Kaunteya Shri Krishna Sukadukadaha. Agama Payano Nityam Tam Titakshasva Bharata. Means we have to tolerate um, these things because they come and go by. But anything that is a hindrance for our devotional service, which we think cannot be changed in the place, and circumstances where we are in, then that definitely needs to be looked into, whether it is internal or external. Anything that is favorable for our devotional service, we should accept. Anything that is not favorable, we should reject. That doesn't mean we can just go on rejecting everything that we find around us. So, but we have to intelligently understand whether the situation where we are in is going to help us in our sadhana, in our devotional service in the long run. If it's going to help us in the long run, then I think we should not make drastic changes and tolerate it. If it is not going to help us in the long run, then definitely, if it is external, then we should move out of it. For example, if a place where we are living in is not conducive for our devotional service, then we should definitely change it. And internally also, I think it's a continuous process to change ourselves because we are not perfect, we are not pure yet. So there are scriptures like Kadambiri, Madhuri Kadambiri, by Goswami. So that is a good guide for us to go through various stages of bhakti. It gives us enough knowledge to understand where we are in our bhakti and how to move to the next stage. It is not for judging others, but to judge ourselves and make internal changes continuously to help us grow. Help us grow. How about that? You wanted to say something?
The attraction between male and female or between two sexes, that's the basis of material attachment and the family and the home and activities and fruitive activities, etc. And I think you were saying the remedy was to become more Krishna conscious. I was wondering if you could say a bit more about that and how to implement Krishna conscious things in order to minimize this attraction or engage that attraction where Krishna is in the center.
That's a very good question. I'll try to answer based on my understanding. Dovetailing this desire of attraction to opposite sex, Prabhupada says we should enter into a marriage, into a relationship as per scriptures, and then help each other because we all need some companion, we all need some close companion like we had in our spiritual world. So we should dovetail this desire to either have a companion as an opposite sex or somebody else as a friend. And if it is an opposite sex, then we can aspire to have offsprings, children, and together as a family, we could do so many devotional activities. We could do more devotional activities compared to what we can do as a single person. With children with children in the family, with wife or husband in a family. Collectively, we can help each other. We can, for example, if we have deities at home, worshipping the deities alone is different, and worshiping a collective worship as a family is completely different. So there is more. What do you say? We can relish more. We can engage in different services. Request devotees to come and do abhishek, make so many offerings. So that way, all these desires that we have, these are the three desires we spoke about. But there are millions of desires that we have in our mind. So all those desires can be dovetailed, can be engaged in Krishna service in some or the other way.
Absolutely. I'm going to Freudian slip when you said offerings and offspring, because offspring are meant to be offerings to the Lord. Not like on a trade in the altar or something. But when devotees want to bring up children, then they want to bring them up. They pray to the Lord first that we can have nice devotee children, and then they can also be good devotees and bring them up as children. So, in one sense, devotees doing everything for the pleasure of the Lord, and it's an offering.
Yeah. And you should also say that these children are walking deities. We can serve them and yeah.
Really clumsy, you don't think that?
Yeah. We like the class. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Karuna Caitanya Prabhu ki
Yeah.
Jai.